Hello to you all. This is a review of the Wilson Combat EDC X9. I've been able to take this firearm out twice and have put a little over 1,000 rounds through it, about 1,100 to be exact. I have shot Fiocchi 115 grain, Lawman 124 grain, some American Eagle 150 grain, very little of that, and also just a box of Blazer 147 grain. So when a firearm like this comes around, people will ask, is it worth it? The price, is it worth it? This is around $3,000. It is much more than any firearm out there, any handgun I mean, that anyone would consider, suitable for everyday use, carry, self-defense, anything like that. Why would you buy something like this that costs 2, 3, 4 times something else that is proven? So after shooting it, it can be worth it for some people. For me, I'm not ready for this gun. I took it out. This gun is fast. The trigger is amazing. The way it recoils is soft. I'm not ready for this gun. My skill set is not up there to really use all this gun has to offer to the best of its abilities. What it's capable of, I cannot produce it based on my skill set. Now, somebody out there who shot hundreds of thousands and millions of rounds, they can put this gun to good use. Me, I'm not there yet. Regardless, I still like this gun, and I am still going to shoot it a whole lot. So, once you get up there to where you think you are, almost learned everything you think there is to know about firearms. So I'm going to go over a few negatives about the gun. Some things that either I do not like or that are hindering me from performing well with it, to put in certain terms. So a negative is, for me personally, is that it's a 2011. I'm not used to these handguns. I have a Kimber, I had a Taurus. I have shot in 2 days more than I've shot through any 1911, any 2011, than those two guns in 4 years. So 2 range trips, I've shot more rounds through this handgun than any 1911 in half a decade. I'm just not used to it. So I'm used to the polymer frame, Glock, CZs, HKs. I'm used to small metal guns. I had a 92 FS. I like my SIGs. I'm just not used to the 1911. That being said, I am decently fast with it, but as far as accuracy, bringing the gun back down on target, even though it's soft, even though it's fast, I still am not as good shooting this as I am, say, my SIG or even a Glock. It has better features, softer recoiling, but more goes into it. You have to have some experience to really get the full package of what this has to offer. So obviously, if you're used to 1911s, you've shot them a whole bunch, that would not be negative for you. But for me, with low experience with it, what I produced was not as good as somebody else. So something else that I would consider a strike against it, it's really not a negative, more so of an annoyance that I noticed about it. So at the top, the slide is steel, the frame is aluminum. It's a lot lighter. And I found that it really conducted heat a lot more than usual. So when I was shooting maybe like 8 mags in a row, I felt the heat in my hand under here where I had my hand held. I felt the heat coming from the firearm a lot more than I would from any polymer handgun or any steel frame handgun. At first I thought, I was in the sun, it's just heating up and everything. But no, I put it in the shade, shot something else, came back to it. It was nice and cool to the touch. or relatively cool to the touch. But once I got back out there, started shooting it a lot more, I do feel the heat generate from this a lot more than I have other pistols I've ever shot, even at great length, 100, 200, 300 rounds in a short amount of time. You could put gloves on, or just actually do some training with it and not just dump mags like I was at some points. But not really a big issue. It's just kind of a little thing I noticed that I would say is a slight mark against this handgun. One thing I do not like is the trigger. The trigger pull, the way it pulls and resets, absolutely fantastic. No complaints about there. I have an issue with the trigger shape itself. I'd much rather have a flat trigger. I'll see if you guys can get this. This is a little, I'm not sure, concave, beveled. I'm not exactly sure what the correct term would be for it, but it's round at the front, and it has some serrations on the trigger. I'd much rather have a flat trigger that is smooth at the front. This got a little annoying. Irritated my finger just a little bit once I was shooting it at great length. I'd much rather have something like this. Even though there's serrations, this trigger is flat. I'd much rather have something like that than how the apex or the very center of the trigger is a little bit higher than on the edges on the outside. As far as it being a solid trigger versus skeleton trigger, that doesn't bother me at all. I doubt it would change how I perceive the trigger pull and how the trigger performs, but just the shape of the trigger is something I do not like that much. So that being said about the trigger, I believe, don't take my word on it, you could probably still swap this out for other 1911 triggers. I'm going to leave it as is regardless. I might look down the road getting another trigger straight from Muslim Combat to replace this with, but more than likely I will just leave it as is. The biggest negative for me that I have about this handgun is the grip. So the machine work on the front, or the back and the front, fantastic, looks great. The grips look great, but I personally like really aggressive grips. I want something, if it is rough on my hands, I don't care. I want something that will dig into my skin and really stay in place when I'm shooting it. These slipped around a lot in my hands. It was hot. It's very hot where I am, but these would allow the gun to slip around in my hand a bit more. So even with that, the gun was very soft shooting, and I could keep the muzzle low. But I feel like if I had different grips that really, really stuck into my hand, it would do a lot better. But I think I will keep these regular Wilson Combat grips on this handgun regardless, just to keep it all Wilson Combat, have no other aftermarket parts or anything like that. The grips, they do look nice. Again, also with the machine work. But I would like some more aggressive texture on the front and the grips and the back. But as is, I can wear gloves, so when it comes to winter and everything, I'll be able to work it out. But yeah, I would like more aggressive texture. So all that being said, let's go over the positives. Again, one, great trigger. Very fast. I'm not fast enough to really push it to its limits, but still that trigger is great. Short, quick reset. Somebody with a lot more experience with 1911s can get this gun really running. Recoil, softest shooting 9mm I have ever had the pleasure of shooting. So I have the Walther Q5 SF, and I thought that was the softest one. That is a heavy all steel 9mm handgun. That was a great shooter. I got this, even though it's lighter, aluminum and steel, this thing shoots soft. I still run into the issue, I'm not used to the 1911 grip frame and everything. I'm not as accurate as with other handguns. I'm used to striker fires and double action, single action, hammer fired firearms, but still this thing is very soft shooting. I would like to see somebody just really run this thing who knows how to handle 1911s, really get that trigger moving. This is a very soft, very fast gun. As far as the build quality, so I was looking over that and looking at a, production 1911. There are some things that stand out once you really look close, where the extra cost in the Wilson Combat comes out to. So if you look here on the Kimber, at the end, that's a little shiny, but you have a bunch of sharp edges right there at the bottom of the frame. You have a point. Underneath the slide, across here, it's all very sharp. If you look at this on the Wilson Combat, you see they take the time to put some edges to everything. So if you look right there at the tip, top of the frame, at the end of the frame, there are bevels and angle cuts on the Wilson Combat. There are no sharp edges on this thing. Underneath the slide, you still have angle cuts, so you do not have that sharp drop off as you do with something like a Kimber, and I'm sure other 1911s. So those little things right there are just extra tool time that this Wilson Combat goes through that brings up that price. Here on the back, you see that between the slide and the frame, the fitment, it is very tight. Let me see if this light will do any worse or better. That's definitely worse. Alright, so, but the fitment between that slide and the frame, very tight. And also on the back of the slide, you have the serrations. On the Kimber, it's still a tight fit, but when you look at that, would that be vertical grip from the left side going up to the top, but right there, it's a little bit thicker. Nothing anybody would really notice. I'm sure it's, it doesn't make an issue or anything like that, but it is larger. That's just something that you're paying more for. You want the best fitment possible between the slide and the frame. Somewhere else you can see very tight tolerances is the end of that barrel right there. So the barrel bushing, the barrel that is almost flush, or it is flush, on that Wilson Combat. If you look at something like this on the Kimber, it protrudes. The barrel protrudes a little bit further out past the barrel bushing. Is that an issue? No. Is it going to affect the gun's performance? As far as I know, no. But again, just the absolutely closest and tightest tolerances possible. That's why you're paying a premium for something like this. Other things I like on this handgun are the top slide serrations, not serrations, but I guess groove cuts for it to reduce flare. The barrel, I like that work on that right there. That is a very nice touch. That was one of the things that stood out to me most about this handgun, those dimples in the barrel. It says Wilson 9mm on the top. I like the location of the logo right here in the front of the rear sight. So overall, is something like this worth it? It absolutely can be for some of the right people. If you are a gun enthusiast and you just like having guns, this is not going to be anything serious for you. Still, it would be something to enjoy. If you pick something up like this versus a Glock or even a SIG or HK, you're going to know this is different. It shoots different, it shoots softer. This is definitely something that you get more for your money from over other handguns. Is it more reliable than other handguns? I'm not going to say that. I shot 1,100 rounds through it. I didn't have any issues, but I could get a $300, $400 handgun, and I'm sure I could do the same thing with no issues. But still, the performance, the trigger, the tight fitments, everything on this handgun, it's well done. And if you have the money, there's nothing else on your list, this is something, if you buy, you would not be disappointed in your purchase. You will enjoy your handgun if you get something like this. Thank you all for your time. I'll probably do some updates throughout it. The first malfunction or something like that, or anything relevant or I feel would be need to know about this handgun. I also have another 9mm 1911 on its way. I will compare those two once it comes in and I get some trigger time behind it. Thanks for watching.